All right, let's begin our panel discussion. I've got a few questions here. Right off the bat, this one is for Tommy.
Sir?
Tommy, what is the earliest accessible technology that you remember using?
Earliest technology I had was an old an old talking calculator, and it was a big giant thing, and it only could do 4 functions. It could multiply, divide, add, and subtract, and do percentages and square roots, and that was it. 6 things. But that was the first piece of accessible technology I ever had, and I think it retailed for $400. Yeah, and this is going back. This is probably in 77, 78, $400. Yeah, for a 6-function calculator that talked.
How long did the batteries last?
The battery actually was nickel cad, so it lasted pretty good. It lasted for a long time.
Just so you all know, that's the price of a car.
$400?
Yeah.
What? Where do you get a $400 car?
1977?
I got a cousin. He can connect you with.
I thought she knew somebody that one fell off a truck or something.
My kid is selling a really bad car right now. Yeah.
Okay, I'm in.
All right, this next question is for the entire panel and not for Tommy. You'll understand why after I read the question. And the question is, have you ever, it's kind of a yes-no question, have you ever put on a blindfold to simulate a blind person's experience using technology? And if so, what was it like?
My answer is much longer than a yes or no. So the answer is yes. And my long answer is that trying to simulate something that you don't use regularly is going to cause frustration no matter whether it's good technology or bad technology. You're just going to be frustrated because it's not what you're used to. It's the same thing with, someone changes your favorite website and you're angry for like 2 weeks until you get used to it. I mean, and that's you being able to see it. So when you're trying to deal with something like an assistive technology, if you're not using it regularly, you're not actually getting used to how it functions on a regular basis.
Because you're not proficient in it.
Right? It's just everything is really hard about it. So I think that finding someone who does use it on a daily basis or actually using it on a daily basis for yourself is, for a long time, 2 weeks, 3 weeks at least, starts to get you a little bit of the proficiency to be able to use it for testing. But I think until then, it's frustration and it's difficult to see what's actually useful.
My answer's not as cool. That's a great answer, Jen. So my answer is actually no, but I have closed my eyes. So I didn't get a blindfold, but yeah, I've closed my eyes to test things out. But no, I haven't dedicated a couple weeks of my life to really getting proficient at the tools. That's a good idea.
Yeah, my answer is no as well. I think that kind of thing is like, it's good to like open your eyes to these sort of things. Like I've seen other people that will do, like they'll try to like fill out a form while balancing like a balloon in the air to try to like simulate like having ADD or something. So these kind of activities, like those are cool, like to kind of like open your eyes and become aware of these kind of things. But I think like what Jen said, like you just get like frustrated and hate it. So yeah.
I think the real difference is that for them, it's their life. That's how they interact. For you, it's a novelty.
Well put. Nicely done.
Okay, next question. What are the best resources for learning more about accessibility? And we've touched on this in a few of the talks, but for now, bringing it all together.
The resources I use are following good people on Twitter, Ryan Florence, Marcy Sutton, amongst others. But also the specification is not really rocket science. So reading through, if you're building a drop-down, you should be looking at the specification for accessibility for building drop-downs. Like, just read it. It's not like you're reading an amazing Brandon Sanderson novel or anything, but it's not like outside of your wheelhouse. It is your wheelhouse.
Where do you find that specification?
I just Google it every time. What is it? Do you know
what are the words used to Google to find it?
Accessibility specification. It comes up pretty quickly.
I think to go on with what Kent said, they look scary when you like first look at it because it's just like plain white text. It's like white with like black text and just like tons of it, right? But like a lot of the things are just like bullet points. So all you have to do is just like go down each bullet point and just kind of like check it off the list. And like if you look at it that way, it makes the whole process a lot simpler.
It's a good way to get started, at least, yeah.
So the thing with those is every time I've looked at them, I've always rolled my eyes because the specification is really good and they give you multiple options for those specifications for each thing that you're looking at. But when you're looking at it, you're like, well, I want this piece from this one and that piece from that one and this other piece from this one because the way that they're doing it is stupid. And you got to kind of take a step back a little bit and take a deep breath and recognize that there's a reason they're recommending you do it in these certain fashions. And I'm not saying you have to stick to it as much as find the gems in each one, use them as guides, and find the answer that's going to work for you and for your users. So taking, as a side note, I also still want to throw out there the Axe, Chrome, and Firefox plugins is another great way to get started because it's something that you don't have to Google, it's something you don't have to look up, but it is something that has links out to much more information, and it tries to give you information right there on your web page where you can see it and play it and manipulate it and work with it and try to solve it right there.
Cool. The next question comes from Twitter, from user Zeris, who says, Tommy, what tools do you use to browse the internet?
I use an iPhone and a MacBook Pro, a very old MacBook Pro. And I'll tell you why. I prefer the iPhone, and I'll tell you why. On the MacBook Pro, I use the arrow keys to go up and down, right? On the iPhone, I use my finger. So I can tell where things are on the screen on the phone, and on the computer, I have no idea where things are on the screen. So I find it's much easier to browse the on the phone than on the MacBook.
And on the phone, is there any special setting or tools you have installed or anything you have to do to get it to do what you want?
VoiceOver. You just turn on VoiceOver and go. That's what's so great about the iPhone, and quite frankly, so great about Apple itself. I mean, that they've had VoiceOver since 2004. It was installed on the first machines that were released back in May of 2004. And I've been hooked ever since. The old program I was using, the Outspoken, it was good, but it didn't do nearly what VoiceOver could do. I mean, with VoiceOver, I can take pictures. I can make playlists of music. I can do all sorts of things where Outspoken didn't have those capabilities. So, and again, like Jen was talking about this morning, and I reiterate the same thing. If you want your accessibility to work, you have to build it from the ground up. You can't try and bolt it on later because it'll never work.
You can certainly try, though.
You can give it a go, but it's going to be fleshy.
Hey, Dave, is it okay if I ask? Oh, I don't know what happened to my. Can I ask a quick? Oh, it is working. Yeah, can I ask a quick question about that?
Oh, you just want to turn this whole thing around, huh? You just want to watch the
I
world
want to ask
burn.
you a question, Dave.
Oh, boy. I did not sign up for this.
So when was the last time you used your app with your client? Oh, that's cool. No, so we live in a world where we have applications that are inaccessible. So where's a good place to start? If I come into an app, it's not accessible, and my mic doesn't. Where's the best? Well, you talked about it in your talk today, Jen. But Tommy, do you have any suggestions as well as to how to make an inaccessible app accessible?
I don't know, because I don't know how to write code and stuff, so I wouldn't know. But like I said this morning, you got to make the buttons. You got to label your buttons. You got to, if there's images, label those if you can. Take the guesswork out for me. Because sighted people can see what's up. And a thing that's been happening lately, the iPhone is now saying, I forget what the line is now, but they say possible text, confirm or what, like in Uber or in Lyft. There's, the way they've reset it now. So there's one button that's not marked, but it does say possible text, confirm. And so, I hit that and I was like, ooh, okay, that works.
So presumably there's a graphic there that the phone is trying to interpret as
That's right.
confirm
And
graphic.
somebody there at Lyft, fell asleep at the wheel and forgot to do this one thing. So I'm sure in the next update it'll be fixed. Because they're pretty good like that. But it's so fun. Like I tried, I'm into trivia in that. I tried Trivia Crack. Remember when that was a big thing a couple of years ago? It was a giant game. Totally inaccessible. I couldn't figure out how to play the stupid game. It was, it was tons of buttons on it and stuff. So, that's the best advice I can give you is if you want to make your website, your app accessible and make it useful. And, like Jen said this morning, you do that, hey, you get maybe 15, 20% more people on your app, just because you've opened it up to that part of the audience.
Follow-up question for you, Tommy, on that
Sir?
topic. From your keynote this morning, you mentioned that there was a situation where Instagram,
Uh-huh.
their website became inaccessible for a period of 8 months.
Uh-huh.
Two things. Can you describe what broke about the accessibility, and why did it take them so long to fix it?
Well, I don't know why it took them so long to fix it. I have no idea, but it did. It was like 3 or 4 different updates before it finally got to fix. So what was broken? I couldn't choose filters. I could take a picture, but I couldn't choose filters. I couldn't choose where I wanted the picture. Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, all those. All that stuff was broken. They were all just buttons. So it was completely no good for me. I mean, I could take a picture and then just post it on Instagram alone, but I like sharing it with the other socials. You know what I mean? Because it's, it just gives you the presence there, and you're on 4 at the same time. So yeah, I'm doing it that way.
Thank you. Next question. Jen touched on this a bit in her talk, and we'd like to go a little bit deeper into it, which is, for my manager, why should I work on accessibility when it benefits such a small number of customers? The numbers sometimes show big numbers, 15 to 30%, but in reality, sometimes managers don't believe these numbers. It becomes hard to justify. How can I make the strongest case to my business?
8% of men are colorblind. What are the chances that not a single man in your building is not colorblind? Find them and bring them to your manager. Dead serious. During conversations today, it was interesting how, listening to Tommy talk today actually gave people a different perspective. It gave them an emotional connection to someone who they could think about and say, yeah, Tommy's going to have issues with this when he tries to look at my website next. A personal connection. If you can find just one person who can come up and talk to you, who can go talk to your manager, you're going to capture the ability to say, but that person's going to have issues with this button because the contrast isn't high enough. Accessibility becomes a real thing right at that moment.
One of the things Jen talked about earlier this morning, and I meant to mention it as well, and I didn't. I'm so thrilled that you did. Thank you for that, too. But accessibility works for everybody. Accessibility works for everybody. So let me just show you. Jen talked about the ramp at the mall, right, or at the store. So it's it's for it's for somebody in a wheelchair, but a mom with a baby carriage or a delivery person with a dolly, a little hand truck or whatever. But how about another one? Audiobooks. That was our jam. That was for us. That was my people. And now it's $1 jillion industry because y'all are listening to books in the cars, on the train, everywhere you go. And so accessibility works for everybody. So you might not see it at first. It might not make sense, but trust me, people are. Here's a fun little thing. So somebody a lot smarter than me said this, and I'm going to steal this from their talk. He said, imagine, if you will, that there were as many blind people in the world as there are, choose your own group. We'll just say black people. We'll just go with that, okay? Imagine if there were as many blind people on the planet as there are black people. What a different world this would be. You imagine? But there's not. There's none of us. We're a teeny tiny little group. We're invisible. People don't know us. People are scared to death of us because they don't want to become us. And it's horrible. Just walking down. I mean, every time I leave my house, I have an adventure with the sighted. Every single time. It's crazy because people don't know how to be with us. It's so weird.
What percentage, Tommy, of the population is blind?
Well, we tried to do some work on that and tried to figure out, because there's all different degrees of blindness, right? There's people with RP, there's people with, who are aging, people who've been injured in war and that kind of thing. So I was just looking for my people, blind since birth. And the best we could figure out is there's probably about 300,000 Americans that are blind since birth. So that is, 0.1, even less than 0.1% of the population here in this country. Yeah.
That's a lot higher than I personally would have guessed, actually.
Well, it ain't many. It ain't many. And so as a result, people don't know what to do. I was telling somebody a story before. I was walking in my neighborhood, and there was a woman behind me, and I swear to you, about every other step, careful, watch out, left, over to the left, no, too far. I'm like, Jesus, sweetheart, hang on a second, my love. And I just pulled over. I said, you first, sweetheart. You go ahead, my love. I'll see you later, all right, honey? Mwah. Good, bye-bye. Get away from you, kooky.
Okay, this is another question that's for everyone except Tommy. Tommy, I don't know why we keep excluding you from these questions.
That's all right. It's life. You know what I mean? I'm used to it.
How have you made coding for accessibility exciting and fun and not just another to-do?
Well, for me, I like to brag about it. In my like open source projects and things, I like to say, this is the most accessible component of its kind. It's not just to brag about necessarily to say how cool I am or how much effort I put into it, but just to like it's a major feature of the component that I'm sharing with you, and calling it out is a mechanism that I'm using to get people to think about it as well. Some people they're regulated on the kinds of things that they can use. It has to be compliant or whatever, but yeah, it's a major feature of any user interface component that I open source. So that is one of the things that makes it fun for me, is to see what are other components like this doing, and how can I satisfy all the use cases that I can. It's almost like a game in some ways.
One of the reasons why many of us are programmers is because we like to solve puzzles and problems. And when we look at accessibility, we're still looking at it like it's a feature and not a problem or a bug that we need to solve. And I don't know about you, but when I've been fighting with a bug for a bit, and I finally find that like phenomenally ingenious way of solving it, and then I go like later and find out that there's like a one-liner script that I could have used to fix it, you know, it kind of makes me wonder if these things were more available and more understood, whether it would have taken me so long to solve it. But then the other question, or the other part of it, is that I had a lot of fun solving that bug. You know, and the gratification from actually finding an answer is really, you know, something that, you know, only you and I really get, right? And with that comes the question of, are we looking at accessibility like, oh gosh, it's another to-do? Or are we looking at it like another bug? You know, and I think that sometimes, and most of the time in life, it's all about our own perception and it's about our own attitudes. It's about how we choose to look at something. We choose to be happy. We choose to find it exciting. We choose to find it annoying and frustrating and something we would rather not do. So trying to change our own personal attitudes and perspectives is the first step to finding it fun. And then on top of that, sometimes tossing in a hackathon is great.
I think for me, it's sort of along what Kent said. Like, there's a lot of people that just don't like doing accessibility, or they don't like know it at all. So I think being able to like abstract it away and then like essentially hide accessibility so that your coworkers don't even have to think about it. That for me is what's fun. Like making it so that like my coworkers and people that come after me, like it just simplifies their life and just makes the developer experience better. So yeah, just like figuring that out, and then figuring out a way that you can make it so that you only have to solve this problem once. That way you never have to go back and like figure out how to make it accessible, because you did it once, and then your life is just easier after that.
And I both love and hate that at the same time. I think that the ability to solve that problem and have it done is great. The ability to not have to think about it is great. The problem is that means we never think about it. So that's kind of the situation that we're in now, right? Is that no one's thought about it in so long that now we're having to go back and fix it.
Okay, the next question is a quick one for Tommy, and then I'll follow it up with a long one for Tommy. The quick one is, what kind of music do you enjoy?
The shorter answer is, what don't I enjoy? I don't really care for traditional classical music, you know, like J.S. Bach and Beethoven and Handel and all those cats, and Mozart, and even up to Ravel and Debussy. Like, it doesn't swing, you know what I mean? It doesn't really swing. Although a friend of mine insists that Mahler does. He's like, you got to listen to Mahler 6. It swings. I was like, you're wrong. Come on. So like that and classical music I don't listen to. Pretty much everything else, the funk, soul, pop, hip hop, house, drum and bass, you know, everything. I like it all. Old stuff, all the way back. I mean, back to like the 30s and stuff, the early Sinatra stuff
Good
with the
stuff.
Dorseys and stuff, the Glenn Miller Orchestra. I could go all day. I listen to tons and tons of stuff. Classical music and countries and stuff I don't dig.
All right. Okay, Tommy, longer one. Does
Sir.
the blind community tell each other about accessible websites?
I don't know, because I'm not really a member of the blind community. As I said this morning, I was mainstreamed. So if you weren't here for this, and if you did, well, you get to hear it twice. But honestly, so I was mainstreamed. I went right through the public school systems until the 9th grade, and then I went away to boarding school for 10, 11, and 12, and then off to university, and away I went. And so as a result, I don't really know a lot of blind people, because I never, I grew up alone. I was just, because my mom wanted me to have the experiences of my sisters. And as a result, look, and I would have liked to have gone to school for the blind for 1 year. I think it would have been really helpful, but that didn't happen. So I don't really know what the blind community does, because I'm not really a member of it. And there are people in the blind community that don't like me, that don't like how I do it, that think I'm a bit of a creep, you know what I mean? So there are haters in that community. It's so funny, right? You'd think a little teeny group of people. No, but they break each other's cojones too. They just have to find them first.
Can I actually interject before you move on with
Yeah,
that
sure.
one? My mother is deaf. And
Is that right?
She went deaf when she was 3 months old, so almost since birth. There was a fever that she had that lasted so long that it burst both of her eardrums, and so she's almost totally deaf. As opposed to sending my mom to a school for the deaf, which would have taught her sign language, as soon as my grandmother figured out that all she was learning was sign language and she wasn't learning to speak, she pulled her out and put her into the regular school system so that she communicated not only with her, but just with the world in general in a way that my grandmother felt was more mainstreamed. So again, my mom was also a mainstreamed
Yeah,
deaf person.
And they fight too. The deaf community fights too.
Oh.
Remember when Heather Whitestone won Miss America? Anybody? Mm-hmm. They hated her. They hated her because she spoke. That's right. So poor Heather Whitestone, the first deaf Miss America, and they broke her cojones too.
Okay, what is, Tommy, in your experience, the most accessible website that you've ever used?
Probably Apple. I mean, their website is great because I can go shopping. I can go, it's so good, I can choose what color gift card I want to give somebody for Christmas time. I can literally choose the color of gift card. I can choose the color of my phone. Like, I don't know, do I get space gray, gold, or silver? I don't flippin' know. They're all the same to me.
Which one did you choose?
I forget what I get. What is that? Can you see?
I don't know. I can't even tell.
Oh, it's got a case, so you can't tell.
Oh,
I think
okay.
it's a space gray. I think I went for the space gray.
All right, good choice.
Thank you.
Clearly. Last question to round out the evening. This is for everyone, but probably more of an engineering focus. And the question is, it seems
But
like...
me.
Yeah. Tommy, you can fake it till you make it, I think. And we're all faking it anyway. It seems like there are new JavaScript frameworks, libraries, and specifications every 42 seconds. Certainly too many to keep up with. Does accessibility technology move at comparable speeds?
No, certainly not at every 42 seconds. Something that I do want to point out is HTML at its base is accessible. The web is accessible by default. It's us that breaks its accessibility features. So though it doesn't need to add any more on top of the HTML, however, because of the fact that the rest of the technologies are evolving, we've come up with ways to circumvent our circumvention, as to say. So at that point, we do have ARIA tags, but the first rule of ARIA, don't use ARIA. If you don't absolutely have to, don't. Use semantic HTML to begin with, and then add your JavaScript and features on top of that to try to keep it as accessible by default as possible.
I think that's a super point that you should be able to code your entire lots of us are using React and stuff, but whatever HTML pops out of your components, it should be using semantics that are built into the web. The reason that accessibility technology doesn't move as fast as the JavaScript community is because like we're the ones who are coming up with all these weird abstractions on top of an accessible technology in the first place. And it's the abstractions that we're experimenting with and trying new things out. We don't need to experiment with with the platform as much. And so, yeah, to answer the question, definitely not moving as fast. But still just as important to keep up with, I guess, or get up with.
Last word, anyone?
Cheese.
Jeez. All right, can we please get a big round of applause for our panelists?